All right, welcome everyone. My name is Amber Bundy Davis, and I am representing our admissions team here at the Carlson School of Management. I'm the Associate Director of Admissions, Recruiting, and Diversity for our MBA programs. And I'm happy to be with you all here today to talk to you about our program, but mostly to listen about our program from our current students. So I'm going to actually have them introduce themselves, and if I can have you all just say your name, where you're from, and then also your enterprise. Let's start with Sonia.
Hi, I'm Sonia Ewert. I grew up in central Wisconsin, but I've been living in Minneapolis for the better part of the last 10 years. For enterprises, I just wrapped up 2 semesters in the consulting enterprise, and I just had my first day with the funds enterprise that I'll be doing for my final semester.
I will follow up. I'm Kat. I'm a second-year MBA classmate of Sonia. I just finished up with the Carlson Brands Enterprise, and that will be it for me for my Carlson experience in the enterprises. I grew up in the Bay Area of California, and I moved out to Minneapolis about 4.5 years ago from New York.
Then I'm Rich Narendran. I'm in the consulting enterprise, but today was our first day, so I'm just in it. But I'm originally from Houston, Texas, moved to Minneapolis in 2014. So I've been here for the last 4 years.
Awesome. So we have a great group of students here representing our student body and our student clubs. And throughout our questions, you'll get to learn a little bit more about them and their experiences. But the purpose of this Be Belong Become live video that we're doing is for you all to get an inside look at our students' application journey, their admissions process, as well as their time here at Carlson. So I'm going to kick it off with our first question, which is, what was the first thing that you thought when you, what was the first thing that went through your head actually when you were first introduced to the Carlson School of Management as an option? Anyone could start.
I can jump in again. I actually did my undergrad at the University of Minnesota over in the College of Food, Agricultural, and Natural Resource Sciences. So I was kind of continuously aware of Carlson and that it was a potential option for the MBA. I think when I really narrowed in on it, I was really excited about the connections it had to food and agricultural companies in the area, because I knew I wanted to stay in that space, and was excited about the idea of, I had a great experience at University of Minnesota for my undergrad, and I knew it would be the same for my grad.
Yeah, I think as you start looking at different schools and you start meeting different students or different alumni, you start to realize the personalities of different schools. And so I think when I was first getting introduced to it was just meeting with current students and alumni. And my initial thoughts were that everyone seemed very friendly and familial and welcoming, which just felt really good as you were talking to people, that you felt like you could build a network really quickly if you went to school here, and that you would sort of be welcomed in. And I think that's been true since I've started. So
I would echo what Richard was saying also, actually. Well, I didn't go to the University of Minnesota. My graduate education with Carlson was the first that I've ever done with the U of M. And I knew coming in that the university had a big presence in the cities. It had a very positive presence. I wasn't sure at all about anything with Carlson. But once I got here, exactly what Richard said, everybody was warm, welcoming, eager to answer my questions, trying to make sure that this was the right fit, not just a fit because it happened to be in the state.
Yeah, that's awesome. We often hear from some of like our applicants and prospective students that they have reservations about graduate programs or reservations about Minnesota. So what were some of the reservations that you had about Carlson or the University of Minnesota or coming to Minnesota, right? I know people talk about the cold, right? Was that an issue for you? What were some of those reservations that you had?
I'll start. As someone who has spent a lot of time on both coasts, I definitely had a little bit of concern coming out to Minnesota. I didn't know much about the Midwest, and like Amber said, the weather was something to contend with or to think about from the get-go. But ever since I've been out here, I have just fallen in love with the state more and more. And I think part of what really drove it home for me with Carlson is after being in the city, in the Twin Cities for a couple of years, and then looking at Carlson for grad school, I found that the University of Minnesota and Carlson really holds true to some of those Minnesota core values. So that idea of being community, of this support system that just by nature is pervasive around the cities was really echoed in Carlson. So it felt like I really was entering into more of what I could do with my professional life that I had started to love within my personal life as well.
Yeah, I guess as I mentioned in the beginning, I'm from Texas, and so when I moved here before going to Carlson, I moved here straight out of undergrad to work for a few years, and I, like many people who move here from other states, had the plan of I'm going to move to Minneapolis, work for a couple years, whatever, and then leave. So when I was thinking about Carlson, any reservations were more about, okay, do I want to stay more in the state or stay in the region? Do I want to go back home to Texas? The weather is always an issue for me, especially this time of year. But yeah, I agree with what Kat said about the people. And then I think the community impact piece is just massive. The school has such a presence in the Twin Cities area in terms of the business community and then the community at large as well. And really pushes having a positive impact in the community as a sort of core main tenet of the school. And that to me was exceptionally appealing. And out of, when talking to other schools or looking at other schools, that was the only school that put that at the top of the list. Like the number one mission is use business to better the community and to do good. And so that is what kind of sold it for me.
Nice.
Yeah, I'll start with the weather, a little bit of a different perspective since I had grown up in central Wisconsin. I actually love the winters and love the cold. Ice skating, skiing, they were all a really big part of growing up. So if you're coming from somewhere else, I advise giving a go at broom ball where you run around on the ice just in boots. Just something to get out and appreciate that it is, that it is cold. And one of the really cool things about Minneapolis is that just about every single park has a flooded area for skating or broom ball every winter. So no matter where you live, you'll probably be within 6 blocks of being able to get to enjoy some of those winter sports. For Carlson as a whole and kind of for business school, for me, it was a little bit more weighing between a policy program or doing a Master's of Science in something over in plant nutrition or soil science. And I was nervous about business school because I had this impression that it was all about just finding ways to drive profit and to make money. And to echo a lot of what Kat and Rich said at Carlson, I really found this idea of business as a force for good in the community was really strong. And it wasn't just about finding ways to make money, but finding ways to create businesses that improve the communities that they're in. And that's been, so it was a huge part of why I felt good about my decision to come to Carlson and something I've seen since then.
Yeah. I've heard you all say this idea of business as a force for good and community. What are some examples that you can give of that, like business as a force for good, or ways that you kind of personified that kind of saying here?
I guess I can start off with this one. I think every club has something community oriented that they're trying to do. My favorite example is probably the graduate volunteer consultants, which I think is an awesome opportunity if you come here where you can take the things you're learning and apply them to companies that often need a lot of help, nonprofits. So you'll work directly with nonprofits sort of in the region or in the area to address some problems they have if you're a graduate volunteer consultant. And personally, I always feel like I don't have that many great skills. Like I'm not that exceptional at anything. So it's kind of a cool way to say, one thing that, I'm probably okay at is fixing problems and thinking about business issues. So to be able to take something like that and directly go into the community, like I've got a project now that's with PBS, to work with PBS and say, all right, how can we fix something that's going on and use this really huge, massive pool of talent and thought leadership and go out into the world and the local community and make a positive impact. So that's probably my favorite example.
Right. As one of the things I've really noticed is some of the emphasis around leadership within the program, both with coursework required on leadership of learning how to be better leaders ourselves, and then also best practices in leading others, and a lot of conversation around implicit bias. And one of the things I really noticed in the last year was that we had been working with student affairs and asked for more places for us to have conversations as students about some of these more sensitive issues, especially in terms of institutionalized racism or institutionalized sexism. And student affairs made open, created funding for us to have some dinners around very specific topics that we were able to have those close conversations as students and really create a safe space for us to be vulnerable with each other for personal growth.
Nice.
I would say also one of the big things that I recognize now as a student and that I didn't think about as much coming into it was the programming that the school puts on through the conferences and the different initiatives they have over the year are often very, very student driven. Mm-hmm. However, the audience that we end up receiving are all from the community. I'm working on an event that will be popping up hopefully in this coming up spring with HRC, that the demographic and the target audience will end up being people in corporate America currently who are coming in both for the academia aspect of it and the fact that they're able to network and communicate with students, but also see what we as an institution are offering and trying to put forth into the community. On top of that, we have an event every year called Women's Leadership Conference that students are very, very deeply involved in. And again, our biggest audience aren't the students. They're the people in the community who are seeing what we've put together as students and are trying to offer forth as we go through our education and into our careers.
Awesome. That's great. Amazing work our students are doing, our community is involved in. That's awesome. Just for those that are joining us, we are talking to current students that are in our full-time MBA program, talking about their experience along the admissions process, as well as their experience while here at Carlson. I'm Amber Bundy Davis of the MBA admissions office. We will also be monitoring our comment section if you're joining us on Facebook. So if you have questions, please feel free to jot those down, send those to us so we can get those answered for you as well. So for you all, I have a question relating back to the admissions process. So what were the things that you did to position yourself for admission into Carlson?
I worked my tuchus off. I by the time that I ended up looking at Carlson, I had recognized that it was probably going to be the school that I wanted to. I was deciding between other top tech programs, so looking at UT Austin, MIT, some of those, and Carlson, when I got around to it, kind of what we were talking about before, was going to be home one way or another, whether it was this year or another year. So what I tried to do is really make myself and understand why I wanted to do it and where I fit in Carlson, not just what Carlson was going to give to me. And that really did turn into having conversations with the admissions team about what my plans are with what I want to do with my career, kind of like what Sonia and Rich were talking about. I wasn't getting my MBA just to make more money. I really wanted to get my MBA and still do plan on using it to enact change one way or another. So in preparing for Carlson, I really understood what I wanted, what Carlson was offering, where that fit. And then I did the work of having those conversations with admissions directors, talking with current students. I will be the first to say, and I've said many times before, there was a second year or a first year when I was a prospective, Ashley, shout out, who really changed it all for me. She made me realize that I really was passionate about this school and that in order to win it, I had to work for it, and it was worth it in the end.
Yeah, I would say you really have to think about your goals, like Kat said, and I think that's sort of your guiding factor, right? In terms of what do you need to do to make sure you're feeling, and I think it's really understanding, do my goals align with whatever school you're looking at, and then how do you find that out? And I think that natural process of understanding, do my goals align with this school, will show a lot of energy and a lot of passion that you have and that you can bring, and I think that's really important in terms of what will make you stand out. Is do you have a genuine link to whatever is unique about the school? So for me, as I was talking to people, it was really, again, that community impact piece like Kat was talking about as well. And how do I highlight it? That's what I want to do. And when I see that in the school, really stressing that and emphasizing that, so that as you're meeting with admissions officers or recruiters or current students, alumni, whatever, they can see that, yeah, you're not just sort of throwing a dart at the wall and saying, I want to go to this school because it's a top school, but really, I want to go here because it aligns in some way, shape, or form with goals or what I want out of a career experience. And then, yes, you have to work really hard.
Yeah. So I'll kind of jump in on the working really hard part and what I did on that front, because I had, by the time I was looking at Carlson and business school, I had really kind of formed up knowing what direction I wanted to go and that I was coming from a small ag world, running my own farm. I wanted to move into big ag. So that kind of fit was there naturally. So I really, for me, a lot of the prep was about the GMAT. I actively took off. I think 5 days spread across the 3 months leading up into admission from work specifically to study. I hadn't seen that type of algebra in probably about 10 years. So I could work through it, but not quick enough to get the answers on the GMAT time. So I'd also reached out to one of my friends who was a middle school math teacher and did a couple tutoring sessions with him to remember the tricks and how to look at things really quickly. I mean, even to the point that I was making flashcards to remember the difference between an integer and a natural number. I admittedly have forgot those again already, but I remembered them through the test. So I think that would be my biggest thing, is also just to, and for me that ended up working out very well, to not underestimate the amount of studying it can take, especially if you're in a position like I was, where I was, I said, like a decade out from doing some of that type of math in high school. So really taking the time to study the GMAT was very helpful.
Yeah, and oh, go ahead,
Okay.
Gab.
Yeah.
I was gonna say the common thread really is between the three of us. And I'll say this in hindsight, I don't think I recognized this at the time, but this was going to be a big decision. This was going to be something that's supposed to change my life one way or another, whether it's an increased salary, whether I'm getting new skills. And I think that there was a point where I had to recognize that this wasn't just, oh, I'm shooting off applications to 12 different schools. I didn't do 12, a lot of schools, and just like, oh, I did my work, sweet, that's it. This was, I'm taking an active role in where my life is going to go next. And I want to do it the due diligence and give it the consideration that it deserves.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And, I think a big piece of that as well is just meeting with people. If you go to business school, any business school, people will always tell you that that's sort of an overarching important thing, is networking and meeting people. But I think it's even, more so important when you're looking at schools to really help yourself stand out and show that you've done your due diligence and it's been purposeful, whether it's alumni, current students, recruiting officers, whatever. But I think it definitely shows that you care and that you really align yourself with the school. And then on the hard work piece, whether it's the GMAT, whatever, hopefully you only have to do the GMAT really one time in your life. I took the test 5 times, which is the maximum amount of times you can take it. I will tell you that, at least for Carlson, that can translate into scholarship dollars. So that's something to think about as well in terms of how important it is. But I would say if you're absolutely sure that this is what you want to do, which is important to figure out as well, then just be prepared to throw yourself completely at it, because that's, I think, the purpose of the full-time program, is to really say, I know this is what I want to do. I'm going to give it everything I have, and that energy and that due diligence and all of that hard work sort of comes out and will help you stand out.
Yeah. So you all have mentioned different pieces of the application, and no doubt many of our the people watching will be prospective students, or those thinking about going into an MBA program, coming to Carlson, or those that are also in your same seats and have gone through this. So this question requires you to think back again, that long time for when you were submitting your applications, right? If you could go back to the moment before you push the submit button, what, if anything, would you do differently? That could be of like, to your point, Rich, of like highlighting all of those wonderful things that you're doing, make yourself stand out more, or I don't know, things that you wish you would have put on your application or shouldn't have put on your application. I don't know. It could be anything. Think back to that moment before you hit the submit button. What would you have done differently, if anything?
I can start us off, I guess. I would focus more. So I put a lot of emphasis on what I wanted to get out of the program and what I thought, what the tools were, the skills, the education, the networking, all of that, recruiting, that I think Carlson was going to give to me. If I could go back in time and change essays or interviewing, whatever, anything like that for the application, I would probably put a little bit more emphasis on what I could bring to the school or the program, whatever it is, skills or knowledge or whatever that I could bring to clubs or the student life, the culture, classroom environment, whatever, to show that not only am I getting something out of the school, but I'm also putting something back in that could help the other people that are in the program with me.
Let's see. I know this one, in a large part, the application worked out really well, and I also was running right up to one of the deadlines, as per my usual habits. So the thought of maybe getting it a little bit earlier. The one thing I wish I maybe would have done a little bit more during the process was the reaching out and just talking with more people in advance. I do not come from a traditional business background. I had a lot of anxiety leading up to orientation and the day one for that in the program. And I knew there was some representation of non-traditional backgrounds in the program, but I didn't quite realize how many people there were in the program who had the same anxieties I did. And I think if I had connected more with the class above me in advance and going through the admissions, I don't know if it would have changed anything on how I did my application, but it definitely would have kind of changed my peace of mind in that year leading up to the program.
I definitely echo what Sonia is saying. I also didn't come from your traditional corporate background. And I think what I would have done differently, even through the application process, is to better inform myself about what business school is and what it entails. I knew that I was important. I knew that I had ideas of how it could help me and my family and my life. I had ideas of why I was a fit for Carlson and why I loved Carlson, why the idea of an MBA was amazing. I didn't have the perspective of what beyond that. What does that mean to be in business school? What sort of doors beyond what my own specific path does that open? Are there opportunities that I might be open to that I wasn't anticipating from the get-go? Just like Sonia said, I came in realizing that I had jumped headfirst into into a market demographic, whatever you want to call it, that I had nothing to benchmark, again, using business words, nothing to compare against. And business school it's different. It's a different type of graduate program. It's a different type of, education, and the skills that we learn are outside the classroom as much as they are inside the classroom. So even those small things of understanding of really what it meant to go to business school would have helped, as Sonia said, to kind of tee up those conversations and even coming into it from after acceptance and coming in and getting started.
Yeah, it's a great point, which segues into my next question for you. I'm really curious to what were some of the questions that you had once you were accepted? Or actually, let's take a step backwards. What were some of the questions that you had once you applied, so once you did hit that submit button? And then what were some of the questions you had once you were accepted? And then when you got to campus? So in those 3 stages, right? So you applied, you hit that submit button, then you got accepted, you got that wonderful note saying, hey, welcome to Carlson. And then you got to campus. What were some of the questions that you had once you were in those different stages?
I can start. I'll admit one of the biggest questions for me, I think, when I realized I was finally doing it was, what do I wear to business school? Because I was coming from a nonprofit that was coming from working on farms. I don't know if I owned a pair of pants that didn't have some sort of stain on it. So that was something I started working on early. And the cool thing I found out was, at least at Carlson, it's just like slacks and a button-down shirt most days. Some days even just sweaters. It was not as intimidating as I thought it was going to be. I was also I'll speak a little bit as a kind of from the Compass or LGBT side. I was coming from working at companies that were, actually, I think all of my managers before business school were queer women. They were spaces that were predominantly women. And so when I started looking at some of the demographics for business school and realizing that I think that there's definitely, I think we're about 30% women, and then the number of people who are out in the class can really range. I think there was just 1 person in the year before me, and there's been 4 in the year I'm in, I think 4 or 5 in the year below, but just kind of I had a lot of questions around that and what to expect from a different demographic from students. And what I have found is that there are times that it's different, but it's also, everyone has been really open to conversations. Everybody's looking to understand where other people are coming from. We're all looking to be able to work together on our projects and be aware of where those issues might be getting in the way of moving forward, but also being very aware of that we're all moving toward professional work settings where hopefully we're able to focus on the quality of our work. But that was something that I had a lot of questions about going into it. That was probably the biggest shift for me, was just a new demographic of people that I was working with on a day-to-day basis.
I had a lot of the same considerations. When I hit the submit button, it was pretty much just like, okay, sweet, now what? Let's wait for time and hopefully not wish away time, but wanting to figure out what life is going to turn into now. And then once the acceptance came along, it started to get real, where it's, okay, now I have to quit my job. now I have to have those conversations with my partner that says, at the time, actually, I was kind of the rude one. She was in school at the time, and I started my business career while she was in school. So we had to have some very serious conversations of what life would look like and what finances would look like. And even just basic transportation. It was lucky we both went to the U, but if we were at different institutions, it would get a little bit more complicated when you only have one car. And then similar to what Sonia was saying also is, as an LGBT woman, I had my idea of what business was. I had my idea of what Carlson was, but I hadn't necessarily done my due diligence of what being a student at Carlson, a LGBT woman at Carlson, would look like. So those questions started to percolate a lot. And I also was coming from a career that I was welcomed, but I wasn't I'm never going to be the majority at this point, but it wasn't an open conversation. It was acknowledged, but it was like kind of brushed under the rug. And part of coming to Carlson was not allowing myself to slip back into that and allowing myself to kind of be swept under the rug in that way. So the questions now were, who are my classmates going to be? Where are they coming from? What sort of challenge am I going to have or not challenge? I had experiences with students that were wonderful, and I was looking forward to meeting more of them, but I agreed there's always going to be something. What was that challenge going to look like, and how could I prepare myself? Not questions that I really could have answered at the time, and even now I probably couldn't give specific advice, but it was that idea of, how do I prepare myself the most and prepare myself potentially for the worst in order to allow me to have the experience and the career that I wanted and the education. That's what we're here for.
Yeah, I would say for me, a lot of the questions initially were, those, who are my classmates? What are people going to, what does the group look like? What are their backgrounds? That kind of stuff. Are we all going to get along? I don't know. And then definitely sort of a more tactically, I guess, like, what do I need to do now? So I knew that I was going to be done with work soon. And I was wondering about, okay, should I be networking now? How much money should I be saving up? Or what are those sort of more tactical questions of, how do I set up my life in such a way that I can make this commitment, worthwhile and live in a very different lifestyle than when you are working. And I would say my wife had a lot more questions than I did about how this was all going to work. I was a little bit, just sort of optimistic, like, it'll all work out. We'll have some cash. I don't know.
Right, because it's not just you who are joining MBA. It's
right. She had a lot more questions about what I was supposed to be doing and whatnot. But I would say, if you can ever get in touch with current students, alumni, or maybe even people that are going to be in your class, once you start finding out, those are the best people to talk to, because I can guarantee you that if you have a question or feel a certain way, that the vast majority, for the most part, will have that same question or be wondering about those same things. So it's sometimes good to just commiserate and have that sort of community feel of like, oh, good, we're all wondering what's going to happen. So
right.
And I'll actually add one other thing. I remembered something while Kat was talking, kind of to the concerns I had about, about different, like what would you wear for clothing, and and also how that lands on gender norms. I don't tend to, I don't even own a pair of high heels, partially because of a foot injury. But I was able to connect with the Career Center, who kind of in the orientation does a presentation about professional wear ahead of time. And I'd heard that the class before me had been taught, and this is what men wear, this is what women wear. And I was able to have a conversation with them in advance and be like, and talk about changing that language to people who wear people who wear heels should wear this type of heel. People who wear makeup should wear this type of makeup, to just kind of start to kind of break that out of the gender space and try to make it in a language that is that's setting people up to be professional and confident in however they feel professional and confident. And I think that just the fact that I was able to make a connection with somebody who was a year above me, who was able to connect me with the Career Center before even starting orientation to discuss that. I think it just spoke a lot to some of the stuff we've been speaking about before about the power that the students have at the school.
Awesome. So if you're just joining us, we are doing our Be Belong Become Facebook Live event. And we are talking to current students in our full-time MBA program, asking about the admissions process, application process, as well as their experience here at Carlson. And so I don't know if you paid attention to the kind of progression of our questions, but now like you're at Carlson, right? You're involved. Each of you represent one of our student communities and our student organizations. And we didn't quite identify those yet, but if you could tell us what organization you are a part of and representing today, and then why that organization for you.
I can start,
so
I guess.
You're so involved. You're also involved.
Yeah, we're so eager
to say.
I'll start. So I'm representing MOSAIC, which is one of our diversity networks that focuses on people from different countries, different ethnicities, seen and unseen diversity. And I wanted to join that group just because diversity has always been a very important topic for me. I grew up in Southeast Texas, which is a very different area, a very different place from Minneapolis in terms of diversity. Houston is the most diverse city in the country, which is where I'm from. And as I've moved and seen varying degrees of diversity, it's something that I always like to champion just because I think the strength of communities is very much based on diversity, whether that's ethnic, racial, LGBTQ, anything like that. And you need to build that up to get very different perspectives in the room and be able to tactically address problems in very comprehensive and holistic ways. So that's why I wanted to join MOSAIC, and that's, I think, a lot of the value that it delivers to the Carlson community, at least.
And I'm here today representing Compass, the LGBTQ plus club here on campus. We have both a grad level and an undergrad level. And one of the reasons why I chose to be involved in Compass is, as I alluded to before, I have I've been part of the queer community since I came out in my undergrad years and have been very involved in it in the Twin Cities area, and have a lot of, I feel like I have a lot of practice speaking to the issues and being able to be kind of an ally for allies for people who aren't as involved in the program. I also, within the last couple of years, one of my closest friends has come out as trans and really opened up my eyes to the number of issues that appear in the workplace for people who are trans. So I kind of saw being involved in this club as an opportunity for me to be able to be an ally to that community, which of the LGBTQ acronym is one that's really working to be recognized right now.
And I'm here representing GWIB, our Graduate Women in Business. We also have both a graduate and an undergraduate level of GWIB. And I found it particularly important to be a part of this organization and this initiative because there's still a lot of work to be done. And for me, the most important part is being a source of information and access to people who are just looking for more information. One of the hardest things I think for me coming from my non-traditional background, coming into business school, even through the application process, is I wanted to understand what I was actually facing and what this experience would be. I came from a completely male-dominated workplace where I was the only woman, and I knew that there were things that I were dealing with that a lot of other women in the workplace were dealing with as well. And what I found is I feel confident having those conversations, just like Sonia was talking about, of being able to speak to issues in a certain way that I feel passionate about. And GWIB really gives a platform and allows me to donate my ideas into things that I wouldn't have had that channel in other ways. It is wonderful to be able to do one-to-one conversations, but sometimes there's just something you want to say to everybody or that you know that everybody's talking about. One of the things that GWIB came up with this year is a program that we're hoping will continue called Real Talks. Real Talks came out of the 5 of us on the board who just realized one of the most important things for us was being able to sit together and just vent and talk and share experiences. And so we've decided to bring it to the wider Carlson community. It is not a women exclusive event because we also recognize that men and allies are going to experience imposter syndrome just like women do. But by able to identify that within ourselves as a group, and we can bring it to the wider community. And so just like, again, like what Sonia was talking about and what Rich was saying, it was important to be able to be a resource for other people, not just promote our own ideas and initiatives.
Yeah.
And I will say,
oh no, go ahead, Rich. Sorry.
I was going to say for all of our networks, I think one thing that's important to note, one thing that really endeared me to Carlson when I was looking at schools during the recruiting process is I felt like whether it's women in business, the LGBTQ community, people of color, I felt like any issues that were affecting any of those demographics, if you brought it up to the student affairs or to the the student government, whatever, it was always dealt with head on, which I think is very important and which I respected a lot. Was there was no, oh, we'll get to it, or these were issues that if you raised them were immediately addressed and are always treated with the highest of importance. And I've been in other places where that's not always the case for any of those groups, where it's, okay, yeah, we'll take a look at it, or we should do something about it, and it maybe gets passed along. I would say I've always found that with Carlson, if you feel an issue is important and you raise it, it will be dealt with directly, and it will be treated with great importance.
So what other ways have your involvement with clubs and organizations at Carlson increased your sense of belonging here in either the Twin Cities area or at Carlson specifically?
There's so many. I'll go ahead and start. I alluded to the Women's Leadership Conference last year. Actually, Sonia and I worked on that together. And that experience of just, it's a conference that we've had for 15 years now. So you felt like you're kind of part of this tradition, and it was a tradition of excellence. This conference has been around for 15 years for a reason. And because it is student content, I felt this is my moment sort of thing. We can produce something and give something to community that was really going to be educational for me and be helpful for other people. And beyond that, the connections we made, this is business school after all. So the networking that we were able to do and the people we were able to meet shared with us that passion and that experience of, we're in the Twin Cities. We want to build this community. We want to have a relationship with the students that are coming out here because they recognize that we want to give back. And so that was one of those experiences for me that definitely stands out about how we were able to make those connections.
Well, I think for me, one of the big, it's going to kind of tie together some other themes, but one of the big things for me has been in addition to the Compass Club, the efforts Carlson has also done to connect LGBTQ identifying people across programs and across specialty masters and between undergrad and grad school, and even for international students coming in through community lunches that are hosted every month. And for me, that's been very powerful because when I heard that there's only one person who was out in the class ahead of me, we were drinking coffee, and I think I might have spit the coffee out on the table because I had not been in a group of people where only one person was out in the Twin Cities area, I think ever. It's usually sitting around 20%. So it's the Carlson School does kind of stand, I felt like, as an anomaly for the Minneapolis community. So having those spaces where we could come together has been really powerful. Especially, it's been great for being able to connect with those students in the specialty master's programs who don't have as much built-in community as the MBA, and kind of, it's an opportunity for us to broaden our networks, but also just to belong and let everybody know that they belong in this building, regardless of what program they're in. So those lunches organized even beyond the MBA program have been very powerful for me in that way.
Yeah, I would say what I think is interesting about Minneapolis, when you think about Carlson, Minneapolis has a very micro culture to it as well, like a lot of cities do. But I think because of the geographic location, all that kind of stuff, it definitely has a very specific Minneapolis culture to it. So when we think of from a Compass perspective about diversity, people moving here from out of state, people of color, who are maybe of an ethnic group or a racial group that is not of a large population in Minneapolis, I think it's very important that you be surrounded by other people who share a lot of the same thoughts, concerns, issues, virtue, whatever you want to say, and understand that other people do share your concerns and your thoughts. And you can, a lot of like what Kat said, you can vent to them, you can talk and say, I don't know, something about this doesn't feel right. Maybe we should raise an issue, or maybe Carlson's doing something really good that I think we could expand on or grow that would even help our diversity increase and grow. So it really is having that sense of community and belonging, of honestly just talking to other people, and then being able to use the club and the organization as a tool to help promote whatever cause it is, whether it's Quib, MOSAIC, Compass. And so I think it's an important tool, and it's important to be able to hear the opinions of other people and get that sense of belonging of, we have a lot of shared feelings and concerns, and if we don't have this space to talk about it, then we might not ever know that other people feel this way.
And One thing I'll just add to that, you reminded me of talking about people who are coming in from outside to Minneapolis or to Minnesota as a whole. One of the other things when I was going through the admissions process, it was 2016, I think the bathroom bill was up in North Carolina at that time, and the bill that kind of defined which bathroom people had to use. And the state of Minnesota has had a lot of protections, anti-discrimination laws on the books for people who are queer for decades. And then even in the recent, and we're one of the states that voted against defining marriage as between people of opposite gender. And we had a huge state conversation about that about 5 years ago, where it wasn't just a Supreme Court decision that came down on the state. The state itself really had that conversation. And so I felt like a little bit too within the state, I knew that I would be able to focus on education because a lot of those basic rights would be in line. I felt very safe in this state going to school. And I wasn't sure I would feel that way in other states when I looked broadly.
Awesome. Yep.
I have one more thing I'm going to throw in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Listening to both Rich and Sonia, another important aspect of this is our admissions team. Hi, Amber. Do a really great job, and they bring in a class who is balanced and that is equally passionate. I mean, part of this is none of this would work if we didn't have other people to support us. So the fact that I was able to find a collection of students and female identifying people who were willing to engage in those conversations and passionate about it is just as important as me myself feeling that I want to do this. I mean, Sonia and I are on Compass together, and I will say it's that we are busy people. We are business school students, and having that space to communicate with each other is so important. If she wasn't admitted or I wouldn't have been admitted, the conversation would have changed. The initiatives would have changed. So we, as a class also, we are fortunate to be in a community that is willing to challenge some of those norms and those conversations that I don't often see.
Listen, people, you heard it from our students' mouth. We did not pay any of these students.
Not being paid.
Quite the opposite.
I think just one more thing that reminded me on the whole belonging in Carlson and in the business community. Also, just a shout out to the number of scholarships available, that we now have scholarships that are directed at making sure we're able to bring in that diverse class and supportive making sure people from all backgrounds are supported through their school. So, and that's from people even beyond from outside the walls in the greater business community supporting those.
Yeah. I guess I'd want to mention one more thing too, is I remember when we were doing the whole recruiting process and application process, I came to an event at Carlson. It was like a multi-day event. I think it was Connect with Carlson, or I can't remember the name exactly. And it was a 3-day event, I think. And the third day was entirely dedicated to diversity. And it was offsite. It wasn't in the business school. It was in a completely different space, which was awesome. It was like very different than any other recruiting aspect of any other school I looked at, was being with the recruiting team, being with fellow potential students, and sitting down and saying, diversity is something that's important to us. We want to work on it. And there was a whole day in that process dedicated to it. And that was one of the biggest factors when I was thinking about schools and where do I want to go. When that happened, I remember being like, if I get into Carlson, I'm probably going to go there, because I think that's one of the coolest things I've ever seen in an application process.
Awesome. That's awesome. We definitely try to make sure that we are living those values, and that we're, providing opportunities for you all to get behind and things that connect with you as people. So definitely appreciate that. I'm going to throw out a quick pop quiz. So you've mentioned three amazing organizations: Compass, GWIB, and MOSAIC. But we have like 22 or over 22 student clubs and organization. Who could name them all? Can you name them all? Because I know that there's so many different interests.
That's not fair.
How many can you name? Because there's so many.
Well, you got the career clubs, right? You got the consulting, marketing, finance. Now we have business and analytics.
Mm-hmm. And then we've got industry-based clubs with new this year, Food and Ag Business Club. Give a shout out for that. Also,
I totally just planted that question for you.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Also then the medical industry club, the
Millie.
the Millie student organization, and then the energy club, also new this year.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
We got the fun clubs.
Yeah, there's outdoor activities clubs. I'm on the board for the sports business club, which is a lot of fun. Yeah, and then there's a few other ones that are like there's Carlson for Community, which is all about community impact work. There's the Net Impact Group, which is awesome, where they focus on, again, that business is a force for good type of piece. So I think it's really interesting how many there are and that they are so focused on very specific things, because I think whatever you're interested in or whatever you're trying to belong to, you can definitely find that club. Or if you realize it's not there and raise your hand and say, I want to start something for an issue or topic that doesn't exist, I think you would probably get the funding immediately. It's sort of if you don't see it, then we should have it kind of thing.
There's two things I wanted to say on that. One, the order that we listed these in are not by any means the size of the clubs. C4T or Carlson for Community is probably one of our biggest ones and has some crazy events. Crazy events. And then the other thing is, for like exactly what Rich was talking about, is we at this point don't have a specific entrepreneurship club. We have a student this year who's very passionate about that, and she's going through the process so she can have, and she's got a lot of people who are interested with her too, have a club that represents her interests next year. She's working with our MBA, which is our business association, to make sure that they've got funding and that all the support is there. So really is, if there's something that you're passionate about and there's a need in the community, Carlson will probably help you figure it out.
Yeah.
What do we get, like 12 out of 22?
I think you may have even more than 22. But I know the one that you forgot that's like when I got here, one of my favorite clubs that I loved learning about was the Partners Club.
Oh, of course.
Right?
Oh, man. Yeah.
No, for those of you with partners, don't forget about the Partners Club. But I really thought that was cool that Carlson really does engage partners and those that are going along this journey with you. So we're talking about this idea of inclusivity, but also including those people who are giving up their time, sometimes, their weekend, not seeing their partner because you're working on your projects day and night. That was pretty cool to me too. So I wanted to add that one there, but you all did a great job. A+. So along those same lines about community here at Carlson, how would you, because this is also just going to help us out on the admissions team, me personally, how we get this question all the time. How would you describe the ecosystem or the environment of Carlson? I'm not a current student, so I do my best to use you all as sound bites and our interactions with you all, but I want to hear from you. How would you describe the ecosystem or the environment here at Carlson? I just like the word ecosystem.
It's a good word. I'm gonna start because I put thought into this one. All of them. I put thought into all of them. In the best possible sense, Carlson is a finely cultured jungle where there's literally, I know, right? Thank you. There's literally something for everybody. You just have to go and find it. It is very intertwined. Part of all this that I keep thinking about is one of the big populations we haven't discussed is our international students. And we have a lot of students who are coming from even outside of the United States. And from our conversation, it seems like there's not a space for them, when in fact, it is so interlaced through everything that we do. It doesn't come top of mind because it's just normalized for us. So you have that experience of, okay, you're new to Minnesota, let's help you find some winter boots. Or you're new to business, let's talk with the consulting club and understand what B2B and B2C even mean. And some of those really growing, it's becoming more. And over time, it's just going to get bigger and better and cleaner, while preserving the core of it, which is the interlacedness of this beautiful ecosystem that we are a part of.
Nice. Drops mic. That was awesome. What about you? What do you think, Sonia and Rich?
Yeah, I can jump in. So I've spent a lot of time being aware about how the smaller class size at Carlson, I feel like really enriches my experience. We've got about 90 people in my class. It means that I have had classes with everybody. I know everyone's name, and I've worked in groups with most people. So I think unlike a larger school where it would be easier to get just secluded off in a corner with people who are more likely to think like me or have my shared background or be going in the same direction as me. Because that small class size, working with people from different backgrounds who are going different directions, who maybe think differently than me, is just built into the structure of the program. And that's something I really value. I think it's really important to, Rich talked about this earlier, but have a broad set of ideas in the room and understand how to work together. And you really get that experience at Carlson in both the social and the academic side because of that small class size and because we all have, that you aren't able to seclude yourself off around people who you just know.
And the professional side, the small classes means we have more access to the career center and a more personalized approach that some of these schools with 600 people don't necessarily have the opportunity to do.
My answer seems so dumb now after the jungle.
Sorry, not sorry.
Glad I could do this last. No, it's so dumb. It reminds me of Hogwarts. Everyone knows everyone. You know everyone, even if you maybe don't have a super strong relationship with them. You know who they are, where they're from, what they're interested in. Everyone seems supremely talented and genuinely passionate and energetic and ambitious about particular things, whatever that is. But I think it has this really sort of tight community feel to it where even if you don't have a lot of classes together or whatever, you just know everyone and you know more than just what their name is, right? You really know who they are, what their personality is. And I think I could walk into any room and see someone from my class or the second year or the class above me in that room, and I could sit down and talk to them and it wouldn't be weird, right? It would be like, oh yeah, we're both in the program, let's chat and we can talk about whatever. Versus I know people that are at programs with, again, 600, 400 people and they can maybe name 25 to 50 people, but then the rest, I don't really know that person. I think that's to me, that feels like high school. My high school graduating class is 700 people or whatever. And I knew less than a third of them, right? Because that's just natural. There's too many people. So I think it's definitely that sort of really tight knit Hogwarts-esque community. That's my opinion.
Yes.
We're all wizards.
All wizards of the business world. Amazing. So I do want to acknowledge our time and also make sure that we're acknowledging the questions, any questions that are coming in from our comments. Again, we're Be, Belong, Become here, Facebook Live with our Carlson students from the MBA program. I have my last question that I'm going to go to if we don't have any questions from our audience. And my last question to you all is, what's next? You all are kind of rounding out your programs, or not, maybe not. But if you're, what are your next steps, regardless of where you are in the program? What are your next steps?
Oh, I guess Sonia and I should start at second year. Let's give you some time, Rich. So as Amber said, we've got one semester left. I will be focusing more on some of the soft skills and leadership focused classes within this next semester. My plan post-graduation will be going to join Google in Austin. It is taking me away from Minnesota, which is going to be rough, but in true Minnesota fashion, I do expect myself to be back at some point. So that's where I'm headed next.
So I guess for next semester, I'm doing, like I said, I'm entering the funds enterprise that I'm really excited about because I didn't even know what finance was a little bit over a year ago. Taught my first finance class, really fell in love with it. So I'm looking forward to having an opportunity to really round out those skills next semester. I'm also gearing up for a move. I'll be moving to the Des Moines area to work for the Corteva, the agricultural division of Dow DuPont next year. And so gearing up for that and looking forward to actually taking a lighter load, spending a little bit more time with the community at Carlson and getting the logistics lined up to start work in Iowa in June.
So I just submitted my last assignment for the semester an hour ago. So my immediate next steps are probably a nap or going to sleep because I am exhausted. Besides that, we've got whatever it is, 5 weeks or so off until the next semester begins. But for the first years, right about now, you're getting ready for on-campus recruiting. So most of what I'm doing over the break is doing case interview prep, doing behavioral interview prep, and really getting ready, applications, resumes, all that kind of stuff ready to drop because in about 4 or 5 weeks here, I think the vast majority are going to be due. So after my nap, that's probably what I'll be working on next.
Awesome. I really appreciate each and every one of you all for giving us your time this afternoon on a Friday to talk to us about your stories and really highlight that message of being, belonging, and becoming here at Carlson. You all embody that. You all really showcase what our school is all about. So thank you so much. Again, I want to thank all of you who tuned in to join us this afternoon. We hope that you learned a lot. And if you have any further questions, feel free to find us on the internet through our website at the UMM, carlson.edu. And also you can come check us out, set up an appointment, come meet with some students. We're here, we're welcoming you, and we are hopefully going to see you all soon and possibly again on Facebook. So again, thank you all for joining us. Bye.
Thanks, Amber.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amber.
Thank you.